all those blooms. I've started harvesting the tomatoes on here. Started to blush. Welcome to the jungle. Ripen very soon. So this may be the only year that we actually see this. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather and you are probably going to see a bunch of little bugs on the camera lens today. We live in the middle of a lot of agricultural farmland and right now the corn is tasseling. Corn's pollen is on like a tassel looking structure, and when that happens the corn flies come out and they are absolutely everywhere. We've had a lot of rain, and a lot of that rain has been in the form of these pop-up thunderstorms, which have come with a lot of torrential rain and a lot of wind. So far, like I haven't stepped into the garden. So far, things look pretty good. I do have some leaning tomatoes, but let's start here in this archway because there's actually a lot going on over here. We have started harvesting a lot from these volunteer cherry tomatoes. These are all of the yellow currant cherry tomatoes. I have pruned heavily down here, but we're still getting quite a bit of disease happening on these tomatoes. They are lovely anyway. And on this side of the trellis, there's actually 3 separate things going on. Firstly, I have these maypop vines that I planted from starts that I bought on Etsy in the beginning of the year. They were like this big, and right now they have reached the absolute tippy top of the trellis and they're going to keep on going. And so I did have some sunflowers that had volunteered in this part of the bed that were really starting to become a problem because the maypops were starting to try to climb on those, and I really want them trained to the trellis. This is my first year with something like this. As far as I know, the leaves and things are going to die back in the winter time, but still I wanted them trained to the trellis this year and all of the years to come because I think we are actually going to get some flowers and fruit. I don't know why I didn't expect this, but looky here. That there is a flower bud. And it looks like it should open very soon. Oh, look at this one. Oh, that's gonna open in the next day or so. So locally we call these maypops, but this is the Passiflora incarnata, the American passion fruit, and passion flowers are so gorgeous and the bees love them. I'm very excited to have this growing here and to have it coming back year after year because it is perennial. At least in our area, it is perennial. These leaves are absolutely gorgeous. They remind me of the tree star from Land Before Time. So pretty, and with the sunflower gone now, these plants are getting more light. So I expect them to take off. The sunflowers that are over here, these volunteered as well, and they have already peaked, but they are looking beautiful still. Multiple heads on just a couple stalks here. You can see there's 2 stalks, and look at all those blooms. The bees are still loving them even though they're past their prime. Down here, I put in a loofah gourd. I have grown loofah gourd for a couple of years, and when the loofah is spent at the end of the year, a lot of times what I'll do is just put the excess loofah down into the bed. You can see that here. This didn't come from that. It actually volunteered over here and I moved it. And an exciting development has started happening this week. We have lots and lots of flowers on the loofah. Now these ones here in particular are the male flowers, but we did see one little female flower, and the female flower is where the actual loofah gourds come from. Right there. It's way up there, but that's the remnants of the female flower. We did try to hand pollinate. I'm not sure if we were successful or not. The little mini loofah is still quite small, but we are in the beginning of loofah season. If that one didn't take, there will be more where that came from. Now, this is where we get into some sad territory. The green stalk with the micro dwarf tomatoes is basically dead. There was a lot of pests and disease, and I have just been harvesting what I can off of these plants, and we're pretty much done. What's left here is just really wilty and sad. So the plan is to actually reset this with green beans so that I can get another round of green beans harvested. Oh, how cool. So I'm just noticing that I have a mushroom down here, and offhand I don't know what type this is, but I will look this up later. and see. You always want to assume that mushrooms you find outside are toxic, but it's fun for me to look these up. I am in the process of learning about wild forage mushrooms, and the only mushrooms that I've found outside that I have eaten, there's a cornfly, are wood bluets. And I found those in my garden last year. I have not seen them at all this year, which I'm surprised about because of the amount of rain that we've gotten. But yeah, pretty little mushroom. I'll let you know if I have a guess as to what type this is. Some of the disease from this green stalk has crept over to some of my heat masters that are on this side. I have started harvesting ripe tomatoes already, and I have even started to make things like salsa. And I've put some tomatoes in the freezer for future tomato sauce. You can see there's one that's blushing down there, but so far so good with these, even though they do have some disease. I think that this is one of the worst years that I've had for tomato disease, and it's just because we've had a lot of rain. I know a lot of areas in the country have had a lot of rain, and some areas have been seriously devastated with the amount of rain. So it's a good thing sometimes, but obviously too much of a good thing is a problem for more than just plants. There's even quite a lot of disease over here on the blackberry canes. I don't normally see this kind of thing, at least not yet. This kind of looks like maybe we're creeping into fall time. Obviously, we are not. But blackberries is another thing that we have been harvesting a ton of in the last couple of weeks. These are triple crown thornless blackberries, and it's a wild patch, and we just dive right into it because there's no thorns to contend with to collect our harvest. That one was a little bit sour, but most of them have been really good. I have been making things like pie filling, which is my first time doing that. And I've been putting a lot of the harvest in the freezer so that I can make jam with it later. Now here we get to the majority of the slicer tomatoes. This is the problem that I'm seeing with the rainstorms that we've gotten. What I have done is trellis these up with the Florida weave method. And so there are these bits of twine about every 8 inches on these plants, and it's woven in between each plant. But when we get 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts from the west, it squishes all the plants to the side, and I've got to give them a little bit of space. The plants being squished together like this isn't the biggest problem, but it just reduces airflow. So I like to spread them back out when the wind knocks them down. Now this plant right here in particular is my Dr. Witchy's tomato, and I need to come through and just top this. This is an indeterminate tomato plant. All of the rest of them are determinate tomato plants. This one's just gonna keep growing, and the other ones have kind of stopped. They've reached their peak about 5 feet high. There's disease over here too. Like the disease is just going to exist in my garden from here on out, but looky here. These ones are the Dr. Witchy, beautiful and fluted. Next door are the celebrity tomatoes. This is my first year with these guys. I do have some blushing on some Dr. Witchies. This one looks a little bit stuck. I should probably try to get that one out later, but there's a lot of tomatoes on here despite all of the disease. Look at how windswept this plant is. You might not be able to tell, but I can tell. There are some blushing tomatoes over here as well. I do need to come through here and harvest later. A lot of them have cracking, and some of the cracks are starting to develop mold. This is pretty sad. It's literally just from all the rain that we've gotten. The volunteer zinnia are a beautiful pop of color over here too. I've got some reds that have bloomed. Look at that tomato. That one's a beauty. This one is the classic size and shape of the Heat Master tomato. Beautiful. And a lot of times I will pick them when they are blushed like this. Sometimes they'll be even a little bit more green than this one, but I like to bring them inside at this point and let them blush and finish inside, just so I can control a little bit more of what happens to them. Sometimes if you let tomatoes ripen on the vine, yes, they're delicious, but they become more open to pest pressure because as they ripen, the fruits just become softer, and birds and things, we've got a lot of them, they will peck at them. This is where we get into more of the wild and crazy territory over here. Oh, I've got a volunteer tomato. I am going to take this out. We have a lot of volunteer tomatoes around our homestead, and sometimes They can be a lot. Now this is my Kelway Golden Chamomile. It's definitely past its prime. I'm thinking about just cutting it back pretty severely. I had actually forgotten that I planted a pepper plant over here in a free spot that I had in the beginning of springtime. And so it's struggling because there's a lot going on near it. I have plucked off a couple of peppers that just looked like they were kind of setting the plant back. Because I had forgotten about it, it was this little short plant that was trying to mature a couple of peppers, and I pulled them off because if you leave something like that on, the plant will try its hardest to mature that fruit instead of growing things like roots and leaves, and you don't really want that. You want your plant to get big before it starts putting on fruit so that it has like the maximum opportunity to grow really nice fruit, because if you've got a lot of leaves, you're getting a lot of light and things from the sun, which is energy for the plant, and if you've got a lot of roots, you're getting a lot of nutrition and things to make a lot of fruit. So I have pulled off some of the fruit that it was trying to set, and it is blooming again, but hopefully these fruit will be better. It's not going to be ideal because of the situation. Knowing me, I probably will not come in here and do a whole ton of weeding just yet, but I will do some because I know some things will get crazy. All of the dill that I have over here is going to seed, which is exactly what I want. I kind of want to try to make sure I keep a lot of the seeds in this bed, which is hard to see. There's a bed here, and then there's a walkway, and then there's a bed here. I would like a lot of this fallen seed to end up back in this bed so that we get the dill coming back in the same spot every year, but if we happen to get dill over here, I'll know what happened, and it will be just fine. On the trellis are our Carlos muscadine grapes, which are getting bigger and bigger by the week. These guys flowered later than some of the other grapes that I have, but you know, they are ripening really fast, or at least they're developing really fast. They're getting big. I do believe muscadine grapes are a little bit bigger than like your classic table grape. This is my first year that I will have gotten fruit off of these plants. I only put them in last year. There's a lot of fruit. It's very exciting to see. I don't think we're going to be harvesting for at least another month off of these plants. Now down in here, I do have a volunteer squash plant. These dill have fallen over in the windstorm and are shading it a little bit. I do want this plant to get a decent amount of light, so I'm going to move that to the side. But the volunteer squash is coming up over this way, over the asparagus, and it's coming over this way, and it's going to go up over the strawberries over here. I am going to allow this. My strawberries have been in this bed ever since we moved here, and they have seen better years. Actually, this year I thought we were going to have a decent harvest because we had a lot of green strawberries on, but I don't know what took them, if it was birds or some other critter, but I plan on doing a full reset of this bed this fall time, and so I'm going to let that squash plant just come over here and take over, and I'll worry about this later. There's just a lot of plants in here, so it at least needs some thinning, but also strawberry plants are only decently productive for about 4 years before they need replacing. Now, a lot of the plants that are in here are from runners, so they are younger plants than like the parent plants, but I feel like this whole place just needs a redo. Now back to the squash plant, I did see that there was a pumpkin. There it is. Can you see it down there? I may end up coming through and putting something underneath of it just so it's not in contact with the super wet ground. I don't want any wormies and things getting into it, but I think that this is a Dutch fork pie pumpkin. I wasn't sure this whole time, but that's kind of what it looks like. I don't remember my pie pumpkins having streaking like that, but I'll have to look at my videos from last year and try to remind myself of what they looked like. A lot of the times, the volunteers that crop up on my property are hybrids of some sort, because we've got a lot of pollinators around here and they like to pass pollen around. Over here, the roselle is getting bigger and bigger. It has loved all of the rain and all of the heat that we've had. These guys are filling out really nicely. Eventually, we will get some blooms off of these plants, and then we'll be able to harvest the calyxes that are on them. Real excited about this. It might even be able to take out some of my anti-cat devices over here. I might leave them because they're not hurting anything. Still no flowers on my Jerusalem artichoke. And these guys handled the wind very well, which is great. I know that these guys get really tall before they flower, and the serious wind that we have here is something that I worried about with them. But maybe they're densely enough planted where they held each other up. I don't know. They look good though. My husband actually noticed that some of the Sunbelt grapes that we have over here have started to blush the tiniest bit. Can you see that? We've got some purpling going on there. Oh, that's super, super exciting. Oh, okay. I did just pull this off, but I did so for a reason. I've noticed that some of the reason that some of these grapes are purpling right now is that they have little worms that have bored in the grapes, which I didn't consider could be a possibility. I've been worried about birds this whole time, but it seems like I need to maybe worry about little wormies too. So it may be a little bit late to net the rest of these clusters, but that might be what will help prevent this, because that's gross. A lot of the times when a fruit is damaged, it will try to ripen the fruit, to ripen the seed inside the fruit, because that's all the plant is here for. That's the reason that exists, is to make seed and reproduce itself. And so I think that's why we're seeing some purpling on these. I don't think that they're quite ready until about August normally in our zone. See, I saw this little hole in the side of this fruit, and yesterday when I opened up the fruit that had the little hole in it, I saw a worm, but you can just see the chaff, the parts that the little worm chewed through inside of that. Obviously that's not something we want to eat, so I need to figure out what to do about that. As we come around this side of the garden, this is my potato bed. There's actually a ton of weeds growing in the potato bed. Most of the tops of the potatoes have died back, and this is a sign that we need to harvest. I haven't done that yet, obviously. I have grown potatoes pretty much every year that we've had a garden, this is our 6th garden year. And normally I harvest the potatoes as new potatoes. So the tops will die back some after they've flowered, and then you pull them out and you just get these little tiny potatoes. Those are the kind that I would buy at the store most often, but I've left these in possibly too long. Hopefully the potatoes aren't getting gross inside the ground there. But I planted russets here, and russets are better as, you know, the big potatoes. So we need to come in here soon. Today is not that day. I haven't talked about this area much. It looks kind of crazy. This is actually a compost bin. But all around the outside of my compost bin are volunteer yellow currant tomatoes. We have, looks like a little bit of bindweed here too. Morning glory, that's okay. This whole area is just wild and crazy, and it does what it wants to. We will not be hurting for cherry tomatoes at all this year. It's glorious. I actually did scatter some extra okra seeds that I had in this space, and some of the okra did come up, but not before the tomatoes grew faster and overtook them. So I don't have any okra forest in this area this year, which kind of surprises me. But the tomatoes are just more vigorous, which I did know that they were very vigorous. We have a lot of them. So I've grabbed my bowl because my elderberry plant is under some serious stress. Do you see how it's really bent over here? There's quite a few trunks on this elderberry plant, and the reason they are bent over is we've got a lot of ripe fruit. You can see how dark and black. These get very heavy when they are ripe, and I brought my bowl over so we can harvest some of them. It doesn't look like they're all fully ready. You can see we've got some green ones. You don't really want to harvest with a lot of green. You can harvest with some green, but like this head, I would definitely leave. Now this is a big one that is green in the middle, but we could harvest some parts on the outside here and put these in the freezer. Putting the berries in the freezer is what I like to do this time of year, and then when I'm ready to process them, the berries fall off of their little umbel like this really, really easily. So I'll put this entire thing in the freezer, and when it comes time to process them, they just fall right off with just a light touch. Yeah, looking at them, how they are right now, I think I am gonna leave them a little bit longer. Some of this heaviness could be from all the moisture that they got yesterday and the beating that they got from the wind. Holy moly, look how big that one is. Obviously not ready, but I'm gonna leave these for now. Over here is our kids' garden, which is looking wild and crazy. This is very normal for basically all gardens around here this time of year. The tomatoes here really did take a beating from the wind yesterday. We haven't tied them up super well. Obviously, there are some peppers under here. A lot of these beds need attention, but that's okay. We all get tired around this time of year, so This checks out. I believe these are salt and pepper cucumbers. He'll be out here shortly to come harvest that. On this episode of My Kid's Garden is Doing Better Than Mine, we have the biggest Belgian giant tomato that I feel like I have ever seen in my entire life. This may not come up well on camera. It is starting to blush some, but I don't want to pick this before my daughter has a chance to pick it herself. But there's two of them here. There's this giant tomato, and then there's one equally as big on the other side of the trellis. If she happens to pick that tomato before I post this video, I'm gonna put a picture of it in here and we're going to weigh it. That is massive. The wind wasn't nice to this tomato either, but there's also really big tomatoes in here. These are also Belgian giants. Check that out. It's hard to see, but hopefully my hand gives you an idea. Now I myself have some Belgian giants planted out of seed that I saved, and what I got is really interesting. None of mine look that good, and the secret is rabbit manure. I have put a lot of goat manure in my garden and a lot of bagged soils and some like granular fertilizers and things. I'm doing something wrong. I need to take a lesson for my kids and use rabbit manure more, because clearly that's working. Welcome to the jungle. That is my greenhouse. I do have my boots on today. A lot of people ask if I see snakes in my tall grass and weeds, and we do. The only snakes that we've seen have been rat snakes, but I do believe there are poisonous snakes around here, and they would just love an environment like this. There's supposed to be, you know, weed fabric here, but the weeds don't care. We harvested all of the onions out of the side of the greenhouse here, and I've just kind of ignored it for now. The hope and the plan is to put in my fall plants in mid-September, and I do need to amend these beds. I haven't yet. I do need to clean them up. Funny thing that's going on in here though, I mean, true to fashion, we are getting a lot of volunteers. This is a tomato just in the middle of the weed fabric here. This is some kind of brassica, which is not holding up well to the time of year that it's trying to do things. It could be Brussels sprouts, I'm guessing. This here is Malabar spinach. It looks lovely. I've never grown this along the ground. I've always grown it on a trellis. This is not gonna live here. I mean, it would if I let it. I'm not gonna let it live there. And then this here is a tomatillo. Isn't that funny? It's actually really big. But wait, there's more. I've got 4 more neglected beds on the other side of the greenhouse that are trying to grow food. We keep walking past this, and I haven't mentioned it in the garden tours. This is a lettuce that volunteered down here. It's actually in like a microgreens tray down there, and I've just left it and it's gone to seed. The flowers are all closed right now, but they are these pretty yellow, almost daisy looking flowers, and we've got the seeds, which look like little dandelion puffs. If you pick it off, you can see all the seeds there. I do plan on collecting seeds from this plant, and inevitably we're going to let some seeds fall, and we'll see some lettuce in here that's volunteered. Doesn't look like there's anything growing in this bed. There's a couple ground cherries in this bed, but over here, tomatoes. There's a tomato there, couple tomatoes here, and this tomato plant is actually quite big. These plants got big really fast. I do need to pull them out. I'm not going to be able to get much, if any, fruit off of these before I need to amend and put the fall garden in, and all these are doing is taking up nutrients, which obviously I don't want, but we will amend in here. So let's turn our attention to the things I did intentionally plant. The lima beans are doing very well. The other time that I've grown this was a couple of years ago, and the plant stayed pretty short and squatty even though they were up against a trellis. But for some reason, this plant has taken it upon itself to grow pretty tall. I mean, this is as tall as me at this point. We've got lima beans super high. Now there's not a lot of foliage going on up here. There's some. And as you can see, I do have a dead melon plant on this side. I don't know exactly what's happening to my armpit melons, but it's a sad state over here. The thing that I want out of this space the most is the seed. We can see a little armpit melon. This here is an example of what I was talking about before, where a plant knows that it's dying or that it's compromised, and so it will ripen really tiny fruit. A lot of times these aren't the most delicious fruits, but it will have done its job in producing seed. I won't save seed from this little armpit melon. Whew. It's actually not as ripe as I thought it was. You can see that the seeds are a little bit orange, but the flesh is green. When this is ripe, the flesh will be orange too. So we're just gonna put that to the side. Something I just noticed over here when I put the armpit melon back, I had up potted these maypops. These are the passion flowers that I have growing in the perennial garden, the passion fruits. I just up potted these less than a week ago, and the roots are already coming down through the bottom of that little plant. Oh my gosh, these guys are so vigorous. That's great. But yeah, back to the armpit melons. I have noticed that there's quite a massive aphid population, or there was a massive aphid population on these plants. There's not as many aphids right now as there were. You can see this lacy damage here. We'll talk about that too. That's not from aphids, but I noticed that we had some ants in this bed. And what ants will do is they will take the aphids and move them around the plant and actually protect them from the predator insects, which I do have in this space. Earlier in the year, we had some praying mantis egg capsules, 2 of them, that I know hatched, and I have seen praying mantises in here. And I've also seen, as far as beneficial insects, green lacewings and ladybugs. And so I was pretty bummed out to see how infested these plants were just, you know, a week ago. But when I saw the ants, I knew that my beneficials were, they had a battle to get to the aphids in order to take them out. So I put some ant baits down in the beds. It's these guys, the Raid Max, and these are spinosad, which is good for organic gardening. And in taking the ants down, it seems like the aphid population has taken a hit as well. They usually go hand in hand. This here, you can see, is a ladybug larvae. Right there. That's a good bug, and we don't want to harm it. I've gotten a lot of different suggestions of things that I could do for the aphids, and last year, actually, I had aphids very bad. And this is basically a mini version of that. Imagine the entire greenhouse looking the way that this does. It was so disheartening. I tried everything, to include spraying milk on the plants. The milk has sugars in it, and when it dries out, it makes them sticky, and they are not able to move very well around the plants, and the aphids will die. The issue that I have with that, especially this year when I know I have a lot of beneficials in here, is things like that and a lot of treatments, they're indiscriminate, and so those things could also affect my beneficials. And what I would really like is to create an ecosystem where things are taking care of themselves. Now, I may have to sacrifice some harvest for a couple of years in order to establish that, but that is going to be so worth doing in this space. I'm gonna get what I want out of these plants, even though they're dying. There's a lot of big fruit. Actually, this side of the trellis is doing much better than the other side. There haven't been aphids over here. There is some measure of disease, but what we've got are some melons over here that will ripen very soon. I'm gonna be able to get, obviously, my harvest and some lovely melons out of this, but I'm going to be able to get some seed, which is what I want. I've been working on these melons for a few years. These armpit melons are a thing that I'm trying to stabilize the seed for. It was an accidental cross that happened on my farm between a Kajari melon and a Charente melon, and it makes the most delicious, lovely thing that I'm trying to stabilize and see if we can get seed that breeds true. That can take 8 generations of a plant to really stabilize the genetics, and we are back to the original generation. These are F1s. The seed inside will be for F2 melons, and the only melon that I'm growing on my homestead this year are the armpit melons, so that I hopefully can concentrate what's going on here, because I have in the past grown the armpits alongside some other melons like honeydews, and they have had an influence in like the wrong direction for me, and it's taken away some of the qualities that I really love about this melon. So I'm gonna get what I want out of these, even though some of the plants look pretty awful. Now back to this lacy texture. This is from beetles. I haven't noticed a whole lot of like Japanese beetles or anything, but I have seen cucumber beetles, and cucumber beetles go after all the members of the cucurbit family, not just cucumbers. So that includes squash and melons, and cucumber beetles are good at spreading disease. And so I think I know what's been happening over here. For right now, I'm just allowing it. I'm gonna let things play out. I'm getting what I want, and hopefully things will be better in future years as our ecosystem balances out. I was actually in here harvesting yesterday with my husband, and I was looking at this plant and there was a real big praying mantis over here. So it makes me happy to see. Now this doesn't. This here is an armyworm. That's not a good guy. But this is a volunteer tomato, and I harvested one yesterday. Look at how big they are. I'm pretty sure that this is some version of a brandywine. It doesn't exactly look like it, but the fruit that I have inside is purple on the bottom, and I don't think I grew any other purple varieties in here last year. We've got some lovely cherry tomatoes on this trellis. I haven't done much actual trellising of these plants at all, but these here are the blue cream berries. This one only has a little bit of the purpling, but what we get is a creamy yellow tomato with a little bit of purpling where it sees the sun. You can see these tomatoes have seen a little bit more sun, so we have some more purpling, but they're not ready. They're still quite dense and green. And these two plants are both red cherry tomatoes with gorgeous long trusses. Isn't that crazy? Now what we see on this side of the greenhouse are the remnants of the spaghetti squash that I grew this year. I've just left them. This little wilted guy needs to go be pig food pretty soon. But they've died back. And part of the reason they died back was pest pressure, I'm pretty sure. We do have squash bugs in here. This squash plant is somewhat resistant to squash bugs because this is actually the first plant that I saw squash bugs on, and it doesn't seem to care. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. See, we've got more fruit here. Some more flowers. Those are cucumber beetles. See them? And these are squash bugs. There's a bunch of them. Oh, do you guys see who's in there with them? Look. See that guy? That's a praying mantis. So we are just gonna leave things. I thought about pulling that leaf and feeding it to the chickens. Our beneficial would have gone along with it. I'm just gonna leave it. That's the motto this year. I had tried really hard last year and it wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it. The harvest that I got wasn't worth all of the effort that I put into trying to control things myself. I trained this plant up about probably 5 feet and then stopped, thinking that it was just going to stop there like a lot of bush varieties do, but no, it's now come down here and trained out this way. So this plant is massive, and these are the little fruits that we're getting off of it. Kind of like a zucchini. If you were not here in the beginning of the year to know what happened here, I had planted actually 8 spaghetti squash plants, 4 on this side of the 10-foot trellis and then 4 on this side of the 10-foot trellis. Obviously things look a lot different than they originally did over here. I had planted seed out of a spaghetti squash that I saved from spaghetti squash that I grew a couple of years ago. What I got out of that seed was 3 different squashes out of one plant, and all of that is due to just incredible pollination. I'm amazed by it still when I think about it. Some of the squash ended up being toxic. I could tell because it was bitter tasting, so I took those out. I did get a couple of spaghetti squash plants, which is what I intended. I've harvested those already. And then I got this guy. I don't really know. The length likely comes from the spaghetti squash, but I think that it maybe was crossed with like a crookneck squash, because that's what I grew the year that I grew that original spaghetti squash. But yeah, we've been eating these a lot like zucchinis. They're yummy. This trellis has my melons, and these are looking kind of pale. I don't know if they need food necessarily. I may not worry about this too much. My irrigation was broken for at least a week, and these guys took a hit, and so they're trying to bounce back as of right now. What you see down here, these are volunteer plants. They are all ground cherries except for this one. This is another tomatillo, and I had seen some lanterns on this tomatillo. They look kind of like this, but they're actually bigger and a little bit of a different color. Oh, see that? That's the tomatillo lantern right there. And the lanterns that were on here had fallen off. You do need 2 tomatillos to get pollination, proper pollination of the actual fruit. So what had developed on the plant wasn't fertile, and so it did drop those tomatillos. Now I have this one and the one that volunteered over in the onion bed, but I'm probably going to pull them out. I actually don't prefer the flavor of tomatillos, at least as salsa. I liked them just off of the plant. They were actually really good. Kind of tasted like sour apples. They were yummy raw. I thought they were good raw. I recently made a big harvest off of my stevia plant. It was probably this tall and I chopped it way down, freeze dried it, and then I made some stevia drops. Most of the harvesting and preserving and fun things like this are in my weekly vlogs that I post every Friday. I will post a link to the video where I made the stevia drops. It's going to be in the description box down below. I had actually planted the stevia plant in a grow bag that I grew carrots in earlier in the year, and I noticed when I harvested the stevia that there's actually a decently sized carrot over here that's actually doing not too bad in the heat, so I'm just leaving it. I think it was in the last garden tour we saw that the Kalima bush beans were on their second flush. They're still doing so, although things have started to slow down. So this will be really the last flush of beans that we get out of these plants before I just take them out. And when I take out these plants, I don't mean to like literally pull them out of the ground. What I like to do with my bean plants is actually cut them off at the base, because many bean plants will grow nitrogen nodules on the roots that help feed the soil, and I want to leave those roots in so that we can basically amend our soil for free. It's not going to be a complete amendment, but it's really going to help. Plus the root matter is really good at feeding the things that are in the soil, like earthworms. So yeah, we'll get to that at some point, but right now we're still harvesting a little bit. Now our peppers. I am only growing, besides that one little pepper in the perennial garden, I'm only growing hot peppers this year, and it's not because I particularly like them, but my husband needed some more hot sauce, and he really likes the jalapeno hot sauce that I've made in the past. The beginnings to our hot sauce process is being filmed right now, and it will be in Friday's video. But I've come through and harvested quite a bit, but you can still see these plants are loaded with peppers. These are the regular jalapenos. This particular plant I bought at our local nursery, so it's just your classic jalapeno. And then what we have over here, there's actually a bumblebee in here doing her thing. These jalapenos are called Megatron jalapenos. I showed this in a recent vlog, but it's definitely worth showing again. Look at the difference. I really like these. I feel like the Megatron jalapeno are probably the jalapenos that I'm going to grow from here on out. We really like thick-walled peppers, and these are super thick-walled. Let me open it. I'm not gonna bite it because I don't really like hot things. I don't mind jalapenos when you take the seeds in the middle out. Oh my gosh, I can't even break it. You can hear it cracking though. But you see that there? Thick, thick wall. A lot like a bell pepper. Really juicy and yummy. Tastes just like a jalapeno. And yes, I will have to be careful and not touch my eyes. I know. But yeah, so far I'm really loving this variety. It's been very vigorous and healthy, and it's put on a ton of fruit, and it's gonna keep going. This strawberry tower is another place that really needs some attention. I will probably redo this when I redo the strawberry bed in the perennial garden. And down here among the weeds is another hot pepper. This is the jalapeno and habanero cross pepper. These seeds were sent to me by a viewer, and my husband tried them recently and he said they're delicious. And so we're adding these peppers to our hot sauce just for another flavor. Our volunteer Malabar spinach is doing lovely. There's going to be a battle between the Malabar spinach and the cucamelons for sure. My vote is that this Malabar spinach is going to win. This didn't seem to be affected as badly with the irrigation being broken in this bed as the cucamelons. This wasn't wilted and those were. These leaves are a lot more succulent than something like a cucamelon leaf. There's a little bit of like mucilage on the inside. These are quite lovely, cooked and raw. And it looks like we're starting to get our little flower buds. These are quite amazing. They almost don't ever look like a flower. They look like a little jelly bean. And then when they're pollinated, they turn into these little purple berries that are very underwhelming in flavor, but they're still fun. And they have this amazing, very vivid purple juice on the inside that you can use to dye things with. I've never done that, but I can confirm that it's quite vibrant. We'll definitely see that later on in the year. Last but not least, this is our growing space called the lane. We are growing more on it this year than we did last year, that's for sure. But before we get to this, I have to show you what's going on over here. So I had some goats in here for breeding time for fall babies, and I've since moved them out. And I actually closed this pen up so that I can have another mini pumpkin patch this year. We do have some Dutch fork pie pumpkins that volunteered in here. This came from pumpkins that I fed out to my goats over the winter time. There's some over there. There's 2 plants here for sure. And see, we've got a pumpkin coming on. This one is stripy as well. They don't mature with stripes on them. And then there's at least 1 plant here, and there's a little plant right there. The whole time the goats were in here, they did not bother these leaves at all. And that was the experience that I had when I grew this pumpkin patch where our pig pen is now. Some of the vines went out through the fencing that I had into the goat pen, and the goats didn't mess with the pumpkins until they had green pumpkins on them, and they would eat the pumpkins, but they left the leaves alone. So yeah, we've got the goats closed off of this area so that we can have our pumpkin patch, and these will do fine despite being grown basically in pasture. These leaves like to grow well above the grass, and the vines will actually trail up on top of the grass. So we're gonna get pumpkins this year. And I had really hoped for some volunteers of this variety. It is very pest resistant. We do have some pretty serious problems with squash bugs, as you've seen. And with squash vine borer, that one is a bigger deal in my opinion, because you really need more of an infestation of squash bugs for it to take a plant out. It just takes 1 vine borer to kill an entire plant. But these pumpkins are very resistant to both, so we love them. And they get huge. Last year I grew 14 Dutch fork pie pumpkin plants and I harvested almost 80 pumpkins. It was 79 pumpkins. Now on the actual lane itself, they've got some more roselle. I had started quite a few seeds and more of them germinated than I thought. So we've got a lot of roselle. And we have our cowpeas. Now there are 3 different cowpeas that I planted. I have the chicken and dumpling cowpeas, black-eyed peas, and the purple hull pink-eyed peas. And as the seedlings came up, I didn't know which was which. I didn't label them, but I knew that we would know eventually when they started to ripen their pods. This one has to be the purple hull pink-eyed pea. And this pod looks ready too. So let's check out this mystery pod first. Okay, black-eyed peas. Very classically, see that black eye in there? Whoa! That's how volunteers happen. I'll put the rest in my pocket. And then this is the purple hull pink-eyed pea. Purple hull, and then it has pink eyes instead of the black eyes. And there are also chicken and dumpling cowpeas out there. And those are kind of spotted all over the beans, like brown and cream. They're really pretty. We'll see them later in the year for sure. They had a little bit of a rough start in the grow bags. We had so much rain this spring that a lot of the nutrition just got washed out of the bags. But I did come through and put some granular fertilizer in, and they responded really well. They are reaching the top of the trellis, at least some of them are, and they're just gonna flop over to the other side and take that over. Speaking of the other side, I had a volunteer cucumber that we noticed last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I can confirm that it's this guy. This is a gross cucumber. It is very, very sandpapery and like hairy. A lot of cucumbers have these little spines that you can just rub off. This is excessive. There's a bunch of them on here, and I don't know if you can see it just collecting on my hand. These guys are pig food. The pigs will enjoy them. The people do not. I don't know exactly how this happened. I don't know if it was a cross between the 2 cucumbers that I grew here a couple years ago, or what this could be is the result of what can sometimes happen when you plant a non-stabilized hybrid seed. The variety of gherkins that I grew a couple of years ago were hybrids, and an F1 hybrid seed is not stabilized. And so when you plant saved seeds from those hybrids, you can get any kind of variation of the generations past that created that hybrid, and you don't always get something delicious. It's food, but this is not yummy. Way down on the end here, I am growing some tomatoes. I told you guys I had been growing some Belgian Giant from some saved seed. We will start all the way on the end where those are. The Belgian Giant, or what I planted as Belgian Giant, starts here and goes all the way down. So we'll start down here at the first thing that doesn't look like a Belgian Giant to me. These are gorgeous tomatoes, and they are actually quite big, and they're starting to blush. They've got this heart shape. They look a lot like an ox heart tomato. Beautiful tomatoes. This guy here looks the most like a Belgian giant of the tomatoes that I planted. These are really not bad sized at all, and they are starting to blush a little bit. This here also resembles a Belgian giant pretty well. But next door, and this is the one that is so interesting to me. And remember, all of these tomatoes that are right here were planted from seed that I saved from one tomato. This is incredible. It's so crazy how different things can end up when you have different pollen influences. Now, I wasn't sure what the influence might be for this tomato, but looking at it now that it's ripening, I think that the pollen influence on this seed was the strawberry tomato. That is an heirloom tomato that grows in this pattern. It has this shape. It is smaller than this, but it also has a lot of colorful streaking that this tomato took on. So this is a cross between the strawberry tomato and a Belgian giant, and it is actually delicious. It's got a very smoky, lovely flavor that you often see in tomatoes that do have the purpling. And so I'm happy to have it. But just like our armpit melon and a lot of other F1 hybrids, it's not stable. And so this may be the only year that we actually see this, which is kind of sad, but also kind of cool. And after that, the tomatoes do look a little bit sad. They've been through a lot. The hornworms have been crazy back here. But also we're working on balancing the soil in a lot of the beds that we're growing in. This is the first year for these particular beds, and it can be a struggle the first year trying to balance things out, but we're getting some tomatoes. Over here are our Berry's Crazy Cherry. These are a real cool tomato. We've been harvesting a lot of these. But yeah, that's the garden right now. Quite a lot of disease, quite a lot of pests, but also a lot of very cool things happening and a lot of abundance despite all that. Yeah, I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope things are growing well wherever you are. I'll see you guys again soon. Come on, you're a pig. You have to like this. Oh no. I guess the pigs don't like it either. Do you want this?